focusing on Stage 4. Our cross-curricular unit focuses on the area of sustainability. I'm Trent Boyle, Science.
I'm Felicity Hammond, English.
I'm Joshua Barnett, in Music.
I'm Kirsty-Lee, Bryson, Geography.
I'm Coorey, also Geography.
I'm Steve Manning, History.
Before we get to our individual lesson plans, I, Felicity, will be taking you through our group rationale and lesson sequence, as well as an overview of our communication journal. Our communication journal started on the 6th of the 8th as we became a group, swapped contact details and set up Microsoft Teams, which formed the basis of most of our communication for this project. We also organised that each person for our next meeting would come up with ideas about topics and what this group project meant to them and their pedagogy. Our second meeting involved discussion about how our individual KLAs would interact with different topics and which KLAs we would be including. Our next meeting involved our decision on the topic, settling on sustainability. Our last in-person meeting involved us creating the lesson sequence you're about to see, the rationale discussion and creation, as well as the recording of our group introduction. Over the following weeks, we discussed both on Facebook and on Teams how our individual work was going, who would be compiling and submitting and when, as well as working around personal impacts such as fires, flood, disability and other health problems. Our decision to focus on sustainability as the topic for our unit of work came about as it intersected nicely with all of our different KLAs. As you can see, it has relevance and real-world implication for students and therefore our teaching. It is a broad concept that requires students to think critically about both the environment, social, cultural and political impact human actions have had on the world. It covers a range of key learning areas that students will be able to connect and relate issues of sustainability with and between subjects and their own lives. It has cross-curricular priorities and general capabilities of focusing on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and culture, sustainability, as well as critical and creative thinking, ethical understanding, information and communication technology, intercultural understanding, literacy, numeracy, and personal and social capability. Our rationale for this group project, that sustainability is becoming increasingly important in the lives of young people, and as such, students are exposed to and engaging in sustainability with increased frequency in their lives. It is therefore important that students have a well-informed and critical understanding of the complex environmental, social, cultural, and political aspects of sustainability. This unit of work has been developed to increase their understanding of sustainability in a way that has relevance and real-world implications for the students. This cross-curricular program has been developed to give students the opportunity to think about the topic of sustainability deeply across a range of areas with a focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. The unit contains lessons designed and taught by teachers from science, music, geography, history and English with the overarching theme of sustainability. In addition to their own key learning areas, teachers will also highlight the issue of sustainability by exploring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives and how they relate and can be applied to current issues. This unit has been designed with a focus on teaching Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, and as such, each lesson contains pedagogies from the 8 ways framework. There is assessment, both formative and summative, which goes along with this lesson sequence, and the conclusion of the topic, students will create a visual representation and explanation around the topic of sustainability with a specific focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. Lesson 1 is a focus on the Science KLA and will be read by Trent. It has the topic of resource management. Lesson 2 is of the English KLA and will be read by Felicity. It has the topic of sustainability and documentary skills. Slide 3, which is of the Music KLA, will be read by Josh. It has the subtopic of Australian music. Lesson 4, which is of the Geography KLA, will be read by Kirsty, and it has the topic of Uluru and sustainability. Lesson 5, which is also of the Geography KLA, will be read by Steph, and it has the subtopic of water as a resource and the factors affecting water flows and availability. Lesson 6, which is of the History KLA, will be read by Steve, and it has the topic of land and sustainability. Lesson 7, which is informed by various KLAs, involves site visits and tours to places of importance to the local people, in this case the Awabakal people of Newcastle, to allow students the opportunity to apply their classroom knowledge to real-life issues and locations. Lesson 8 is the final lesson in our sequence and as such is informed by all the KLAs. It is the summative assessment where students are required to create a visual representation, but starting the lesson with a yarning circle for them to discuss everything they have learned about sustainability over the course of this lessons.
The following lesson will introduce students to the topic of sustainability by investigating a number of issues around the production and use of resources. Importantly, it will explore the issue of sustainability in relation to the sustainable practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and how aspects of these practices can be applied to current and future sustainability problems. This lesson is designed and taught by the Facility of Science. However, it forms part of the cross-curricular unit of work with other KLAs, focusing on the overarching theme of sustainability. In keeping with the design of the unit of work, this lesson has been created with a focus on the teaching of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. As such, this lesson uses strategies from the 8 Ways document. This will aid in increasing the learning outcomes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, as well as all students in the course, as aspects of the 8 Ways are beneficial for a wide range of students. In keeping with the cross-curricular unit of work, this lesson targets a number of key cross-curricular priorities and general capabilities outlined by NESA. Namely, both the unit of work and the lesson focus on the cross-curricular priorities of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, and sustainability. This lesson also focuses on the general capabilities of critical and creative thinking, ethical understanding, information and communication technology capability, and intercultural understanding. The lesson focuses on the Stage 4 syllabus area of Earth and Space. Specifically, the syllabus outcomes ES3, scientific knowledge influences the choices people make in regard to the use of and management of Earth's resources. The content of this lesson are ES3A, classify a range of Earth's resources as renewable or non-renewable. ES3D, investigate some strategies used by people to conserve and manage non-renewable resources, e.g. recycling and the alternative use of natural and man-made resources. And ES3F, research how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's knowledge is being used in decisions to care for country and place, e.g. terrestrial and aquatic resource management. The lesson has also been specifically designed to incorporate a number of the teaching pedagogies from the 8 Aboriginal Ways of Learning framework. This was to create a lesson that will create a learning environment that was better suited to the learning needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. Specifically, this lesson incorporates 5 of the 8 Ways teaching pedagogies. They are story sharing, learning maps, land links, non-linear, and community links. The introductory component of the lesson consists of mostly direct instruction by the teacher. Students are introduced to the lesson and how sustainability will be investigated within a science context. The teacher leads a brief class discussion on what students may already know about sustainability. The introductory phase ends with students watching a video about Aboriginal agriculture for a sustainable Australia. The first main activity within the lesson includes a yarning circle. Students are sat in a circle and a ball of yarn is passed between the students as they speak. The teacher facilitates a mostly class-led discussion about the issue of sustainability. Students are prompted to think about the issue from a wide range of views and reflect on the knowledge they have gained about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sustainable practices from watching the video Aboriginal Agriculture for a Sustainable Australia. Finally, the teacher concludes the lesson by discussing how the string is a visualisation of how the knowledge of sustainability was built by the students. The second main activity in the lesson is group work. Students are presented with local issues of sustainability, such as coal mining, deforestation for developments, or burning of fossil fuels. Students are then presented with a framework for research, including links to information about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's sustainable practices. They then use the remainder of the lesson to research the aspects of sustainability in relation to their chosen local issue. From this, they will create a mind map of all the aspects and possible solutions to the problem. The mind map will be useful as a memory aid within the unit. In the concluding phase of the lesson, students will present their mind map to the teacher for review. The teacher will assess the students' current understanding of sustainability and their understanding of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's sustainable practices, and comment on where they may need to increase their understanding within the unit.
Hi, I'm Felicity, and I'll be continuing the lesson sequence for the exploration of sustainability across the curriculum with a focus on the English KLA. This lesson, second in the sequence, addresses key curriculum objectives of knowledge, understanding, skills, values, and attitudes, has a keen focus on the 8 ways pedagogy, and effectively explores 3 aspects of the English syllabus. Within the English curriculum, there are key objectives that are essential to students studying the English KLA. Within my lesson plan, students will develop knowledge, understanding, and skills in order to communicate through speaking, listening, reading, writing, viewing, and representing by using language to shape and make meaning according to purpose, audience, and connection, to think in ways that are imaginative, creative, interpretive, and critical, as well as expressing themselves and their relationships with others and their world. They will value and appreciate the power of language to explore and express views of themselves, as well as social, cultural, moral, spiritual, and aesthetic dimensions of human experiences, the power of effective communication using the language modes of speaking, listening, writing, viewing, and representing, the diversity of aesthetics of language through literature and other texts, as well as the independence gained from thinking imaginatively, creatively, interpretively, and critically. These objectives allow for a close focus of the 8 ways pedagogy, key to ensuring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students gain the most out of every lesson. This lesson focuses specifically on learning maps, symbols and images, land links, and community links. A brief overview of the lesson to begin. This lesson focuses on syllabus outcomes 4.2a, 4.7d, and 4.8d. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to find the links between documentary and their local community, including what sustainability projects are happening and how the changing environment has affected their local community, what the land links are between sustainability and personal relationships, how their daily lives and habits contribute to sustainability, and how to outline narrative needed for their assessment. This is a resource-heavy lesson, with both creation supplies and as well as documentary packs required. However, most of these resources are to be used in more than half of the lesson. The first teaching activity, outside of discussion from the previous lesson, is to separate the students into their groups to use the information from the documentary packs and their own personal lives to answer 3 guiding questions. The main 3 key questions are, firstly, what sustainability looks like in their documentary. Secondly, how do communities embrace changes to become more sustainable? And finally, what ideas from both the documentaries and their own lives would students bring into their communities to create positive change? These questions allow students to engage deeply with their community, their own lives, and the documentary content. The extension activity of supplementary questions allows for students to engage in their own interests regarding the subject of sustainability, engage with the documentaries, and explore the representations of culture, specifically Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, and to begin thinking about how story affects their understanding of the topic. This also sets the threshold for group activity ending. The individual work of their own personal learning maps is the final lesson, and it allows students to fully explain in their own way how the documentary task has impacted their knowledge, understanding, skills, and values regarding both the topic of sustainability and their own relationship with it, personally and for the assessment. This lesson comes with assessment criteria to ensure that all students have had a successful integration of English KLA outcomes, sustainability outcomes, and 8 ways outcomes. This includes giving options for how questions are to be answered, such as written answers up to 3 sentences per question, in-depth responses that are relevant with some level of analysis, visual answers with a minimum of 2/3 of the post-it being used, verbal answers that are to be nuanced and relevant, measurable growth on their personal learning maps from the previous lesson, as well as identifying areas of clarification for students regarding the assessment that is upcoming.
My name is Joshua Barnett, and this is my individual lesson plan for Education 6912. This lesson is aimed at a class of Stage 4 students, Year 8, and the topic and overall theme is sustainability, with a focus on Australian music. This lesson has been planned and designed with consideration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, in accordance with the 8 Ways pedagogy document. This will result in increasing the learning outcomes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, as well as other students in the classroom. The main aspect of the 8 Ways pedagogy that we'll be focusing on in the lesson is story sharing. Students will see music as a form of story sharing and connection, and using the concept of music will discuss what impact they have on the story which is being told. Students will begin the lesson by watching a music video called Save the Water by IHHP Halls Creek. The link is provided below. Students will then be separated into 2 large groups, and each group must pick one of the concepts of music. Using a mind map, they must discuss what elements are being used in the song and how they are affecting the story being told. For this example, we will be using pitch and duration. After, the class will have a discussion on how the concept of sustainability would relate to the music being shown, and how the performers and composers use the concept of music to benefit the story being told. This is an example of how you can outlay a mind map of both pitch and duration. By the end of the lesson, students should be able to identify and discuss the concept of music and how they can relate to conveying the topic of sustainability, identify the environmental, cultural and economic impacts of water preservation, appreciate new musical experiences as an art form, and acknowledge Aboriginal perspectives by utilising the 8 Ways learning method. In relation to syllabus outcomes, the students should be able to demonstrate an understanding of musical concepts through oral identification and discussion of the features of a range of repertoire, demonstrates an appreciation, tolerance and respect for the aesthetic value of music as an art form, and demonstrate a developing confidence and willingness to engage in performing, composing and listening experiences.
Today I will be going through Lesson 4 for a geography class. The topic for today's lesson will be Uluru and sustainability and will be linked to the geography syllabus for Stage 4, GE 4-4. In line with the syllabus, by the end of this lesson, students will be able to identify the environmental and cultural significance of Uluru, explain the environmental, cultural and economic impacts of tourism on Uluru and the surrounding areas, discuss in a group setting the economic benefits of tourism as opposed to the benefit of sustainability of natural environments for future generations, and describe the sustainability initiative currently being undertaken at Uluru. Land links, story sharing and learning maps will be utilised throughout the lesson to assist both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and non-Aboriginal students to optimise their understanding of the lesson and learning outcomes. Each of the 3 pedagogies will be discussed further throughout the following slides. After welcoming students to the class, the topic of sustainability and Uluru is introduced. The idea of the topic is that Uluru has been in the media in recent times due to the ban being imposed on climbing from 26th of October 2019. The lesson will explore the positive and negative impacts the tourism industry has on the rock. The cultural significance of traditional owners will also be explored along with their impact on sustainability. Above videos will be used for the benefit of visual learners and allows for the introduction of the perspective of traditional owners. This will be followed up by group discussion around the themes of tourism, economy, environment and culture. Students will have the opportunity to answer the following questions. Who are the traditional owners? Why is climbing of Uluru being banned? And what impact might the ban have on the local economy? Sharing a story is one of the 8 ways and allows for a connection to be established. I would start by telling my story and then ask students to tell their story. Ask students to share their stories of Uluru. Have they visited the park? Do they know someone who has? What do they know about Uluru? A brief history of traditional owners can link the subject back to the land and is discussed with the class. Anangu people belong to the oldest culture known to man, dating back 60,000 years. As you can imagine, they have amassed an extensive knowledge of the local environment, including flora, fauna and seasonal changes. This knowledge is integral in the ongoing sustainability of the natural environment. It is important for students to gain an understanding of who the traditional owners are and why we must respect their home, whilst understanding they share their knowledge and allow tourists to visit their sacred land. Uluru itself is a sacred site and has obvious land links. This supports both implicit and explicit teaching and learning. Students' attention can be gained by listing interesting facts such as the name Uluru was officially recognised in 1993. Students are introduced to concepts of tourism dollars and the impact this has on the environment and the culture of the area. Tourism spending can provide vital financial support to the community and increases jobs, growth, income and medical support. However, what is the flow-on effect for both the environment and culture in the short term and the long term? Tourism for current generations at the expense of future generations has long been debated. A class discussion will be held around the climbing ban due to take effect from 26th of October. Why has the ban been put in place? What impact will this have on tourism? And with approximately only 10% of tourists climbing the rock, will this really have a big financial impact on the area? What are the environmental impacts of climbing the rock, and will the ban assist with the sustainability of Uluru? Students are to break off into groups of 2 to 3. They are to answer questions from the handout and listed on this slide. The questions will prompt students to decide for themselves whether the ban really will have an impact, with many visitors already foregoing the climb. This will also allow students to decide for themselves, with some debate in their groups, as to what they feel is more important, tourism dollars or sustainability of a natural environment. At the end of the group work, students will take it in turns to explain their answers to the class. This will allow the facilitator to gauge students' understanding. Each student is asked to complete a learning map. They can be prompted to use the rock or the local landscape for inspiration. Learning maps are a good way to measure how far a student's understanding has come. They will need reflection time to prepare the map and will assist to ingrain the lesson in their mind. Students are encouraged to show what they have learnt. A lesson reflection will be completed by all students with a 5-minute follow-up. They will be asked to list 3 things they have learnt, 2 questions they have, 1 aspect they have enjoyed, and once more this will assist the teacher to assess the student's understanding of the lesson along with key points. The closure of the lesson will allow for handout and learning maps to be kept by individual students for their own record to allow for revision. The lesson reflection will be collected for formative assessment purposes. This will allow for a reflection by teacher to ensure the lesson was successful.
Today we'll be focusing on the cross-curricular unit of sustainability. The KLA is geography and the topic aligning with sustainability is water in the world. Good morning, my name is Coorey. Today's lesson has been designed for Stage 4, Year 7. The lesson focus is around sustainability, but more specifically the way that flows of water connect places as it moves through the environment and the way this affects places. Key inquiry questions. What does the effect of uneven distribution of water resources have on people, places and environments, and what approaches can be used to sustainably manage water resources and reduce water scarcity? The outcomes from today's lesson will be that students explain how interactions and connections between people, places and environments result in change, GE4-3, discuss management of places and environments for their sustainability, which is GE4-5. We also want to incorporate some life skills outcomes for the students where they can demonstrate an understanding that places and environments change, it's GELS-2. That students can explore interactions and connections between people, places and environments, such as GELS-3, and communicate geographical information, which is GELS-8. The students will require geographical concepts, geographical skill attainment, and geographical tools to effectively complete today's lesson. The concepts have been integrated into the lesson sequence are that of place, environment, and change. In terms of place, the significance of places and what they are like, and in terms of space, the significance of location and ways people organise and manage spaces they live in. The environment is also an important geographical concept and factor when considering water, and we're going to look at the significance of connections to water on human life and the important interrelationships between humans and water. Geographical skills the students will attain are also integrated into the lesson, where the students will be able to use geographical terminology to present findings, ideas and arguments in a range of communication forms to suit a particular audience and purpose. Tools that we've integrated are maps to identify location, direction, scale and distance, more specifically a GPS map, and visual representations in the form of a visit from a local Aboriginal elder. This brings us to the lesson sequence and how the lesson will run. So once the students have settled, I will welcome them and commence the lesson with an acknowledgement of country. At the beginning of the lesson, students will be introduced to the topic of sustainability, more specifically the way that flows of water connect places as it moves through the environment and the way this affects places. Students will welcome the visit from an Aboriginal elder from their local community to tell them stories of how Aboriginal people's value and use of water as a resource and elaborate on how water connects people and places, specifically Aboriginal people and places. Students will then use Google Maps to view their local water catchment areas with an emphasis on the consolidation of the local population and communities living around the sources of water. Drawing on Aboriginal elders' stories about the importance of water to Aboriginal people, the children will form a yarning circle and identify as a class different forms of water uses, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. Today's lesson will also incorporate the 8 ways of pedagogy, the key areas of learning maps, land links, community links and story sharing. Aboriginal perspectives are extremely important in the focus we have today on sustainability and water flows. Aboriginal people's connection to and the value of water is deep, it's sacred and vital for survival. They have over 40,000 years experience in sustaining water flows and water catchment areas within their local communities. The concept of water is also protected by law, which provides a system of sustainable management ensuring the health of Aboriginal people. Non-Aboriginal laws and traditions, however, separate water from the land and the land from the sky, whereas Aboriginal people's connection to country does not separate the features of the landscape. The Aboriginal perspective is critical for the exclusive focus given to satisfying ecological and geographical criteria in environmental decisions regarding water and water flows. Whereas Aboriginal people rely heavily on rivers, groundwater and wetlands as sources of food, and water also has non-tangible or spiritual values. We refer to this as a cultural flow of water, and it is an essential consideration for non-Aboriginal people in the management of water. The status of Indigenous water rights, particularly native tidal water rights, remains unresolved, and this limits the Indigenous people's access and allocation to water resources in many instances. The allocation of water rights to Indigenous peoples has been for specific purposes. For example, those that mentioned above, cultural, environmental and sustainable communal usage. They're often considered only in the context of cultural or social rights. In terms of evaluation and assessment, in the lesson the students will demonstrate how water moves through the catchment area and connects people and places. The students will also be able to explain the interconnections between people and water in the catchment area compared to traditional Aboriginal communities. They'll also be able to review the impact of water on people's lives today compared to traditional Aboriginal communities and human impact on water resources. Ideally, they'll be able to identify the values placed on water in the catchment area, specifically comparing the local Aboriginal community and non-Aboriginal people. They'll also be able to make a judgment about the sustainability of current water use practices in the catchment area and propose individual actions to conserve water resources. In conclusion, The formative assessment I propose will be achieved through 3 short answer questions. 1. Why does water play such an important role in where people decide to live? 2. Describe 3 things regarding water that are important to the Aboriginal people. And 3. Propose 2 individual actions you can do, being the student, to conserve water. Thank you.
EDUC6912 Aboriginal Education. Stephen Manning, C3081507, Individual 5E Lesson Plan for Group Work. KLA is History, Sustainability is the theme, Group 12. Stage 4, Class 8, Topic Theme, Sustainability, KLA, History. Lesson Objective Stage 4. Students develop knowledge and understanding of the nature of history and significant changes and developments from the past, the modern world and Australia. Develop knowledge and understanding of ideas, movements, people and events that shaped past civilizations, the modern world and Australia. Develop skills to undertake the process of historical inquiry. Develop skills to communicate their understanding of history. Values and attitudes, K to 10. Students will value and appreciate history as a study of human experience, the opportunity to develop a lifelong interest in and enthusiasm for history, the nature of history as reflecting differing perspectives and viewpoints, opportunity to contribute to a democratic and socially just society through informed citizenship, the contributions of past and present people to our shared heritage. Outcomes. HT4-6 uses evidence from sources to support historical narratives and explanations. HT4-7 identifies and describes different contexts, perspectives, and interpretations of the past. 8 ways of pedagogy: storytelling, community links, land links, and learning maps. Aboriginal perspectives. History enables the development of students' world views, particularly in relation to actions that require judgment about past societies and their access to and use of the Earth's resources. Students are provided with opportunities to develop an historical perspective on sustainability by understanding, for example, the emergence of farming and settled communities and the overuse of natural resources. Making decisions about sustainability to help shape a better future requires an understanding of how the past relates to the present and needs to be informed by historical trends and experiences. The study of history in Australia requires a valued engagement in and celebration of the experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, past and present, as part of the shared history belonging to all Australians. Students examine historical perspectives from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewpoints. Throughout the study of history, students learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the world's oldest continuous culture, prior to colonisation by the British and ensuing contact and its impacts. They will examine the interaction between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and Europeans, with special emphasis on Aboriginal initiatives and responses to key government policies since their earliest contact with British colonists. Students develop an awareness of the significant role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have played in Australian society and the wider world. This knowledge and understanding will deepen and enable students' capacity to participate in the ongoing development of a just and equitable Australian society that genuinely reconciles with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Resources. ABC Education, Bruce Pascoe Digibook, New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, Awabakal Local Aboriginal Land Council, Google Earth, New South Wales Government Education Standards Authority. Engagement. At the beginning of the lesson, conduct a brainstorming exercise to find out students' existing knowledge of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sustainability practices. Brainstorming action. Students to be given sticky notes to write one thing per sticky note that they know about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sustainability practices. Teacher to create 3 sections on whiteboard. Students to place sticky notes on the whiteboard in the first column to create an affinity diagram. Students to group notes of similarity together. Teacher to monitor appropriateness of ideas prior to attaching to whiteboard. Exploration. Students break into pre-allocated groups and view selected videos from ABC Education series by Bruce Pascoe, Aboriginal Education Technology and Ingenuity, at the below link. Students to list as many sustainability practices from the videos that they can recognise. If unsure of practices, seek teacher assistance for clarification. B. All students must watch Chapter 3 of the Explorer Diaries from this series. Having viewed allocated video on sustainability practices, create a list for middle section of whiteboard. This will form the second part of the class affinity diagram. Exploration continued. Part C. Research modern methods of cropping using the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries website, www.dpi.newsouthwales.gov.au. Go to the Agriculture tab and click on broadacre cropping. This provides numerous articles that will assist the students to create a list of modern sustainable cropping practices. This list will be the third section to be added to the infinity diagram. Explanation, elaboration. Teacher-led exposition of the 3-stage affinity diagram looking at students' pre-knowledge, knowledge after viewing the Bruce Pascoe video series, and after completing the research of modern sustainability cropping methods. Mapping exercise. Students to use the Awabakal Local Land Council map to identify areas within the nation as described in the Explorer Diaries video. Students use the map to shade or highlight areas they have identified as usable for sustainable cropping practices. Evaluation. Assessment. Teacher to assess individual student map to ascertain the student's understanding of the most effective land as described in the Explorer Diaries that Aboriginal peoples use for their sustainable cropping practices. Assessment. Student to write an exit step with one new fact that they have learnt.